Okay, so this is what I did. I took 1,500 grams of butternut squash, and by the time you peel it and pull the seeds out, I ended up with 1,200 grams, and I cubed it. And then at that point, you can either boil it until it's cooked, or I put them in the steamer oven for 35 minutes. And when I pulled them out, I put them through a masher, and I ended up with 1,000 grams of butternut squash. So out of a 1,500 gram butternut squash, I ended up with 1,000 grams. So just to give you an idea, the recipe calls for 1,000 grams. Okay, put that on the middle of the table here, and let it cool, obviously. Okay, there's your 1,000 grams of mashed butternut squash. If you want to do this with potatoes, you can do this with potatoes also. I use the golden potatoes. You have to just be careful because sometimes the potatoes can hold a lot of moisture, but looks like this is going to hold a lot of moisture too. So we'll see. We might just have to add more flour. So there's your 1,000 grams of butternut squash. You have 400 grams of 00 flour. Put that around the side, right like so. "400 grams of 00 flour. This, just to make it look pretty. Okay, and then we have 100 grams of grated Parmigiano Reggiano. This goes around the side like so. "100 grams of Parmigiano Reggiano. Okay, and 2 eggs, just the yolks. I don't want to make it too wet. All right, so we have our flour and our cheese around the outside, like so. Make a tall well. Take a spoon, make a hole down into the middle, right, like so. Got it? Here's our 2 eggs. Eggs go in there. Okay, we'll just poke the eggs like so. And we'll just put the eggs in like so. All right, so once the eggs were in, then I just poke the eggs and put the eggs into the squash and just kind of mix it together, right, like so. That's it. All right, that's all the ingredients. I'm gonna take this and start folding it in like this. And the squash and the egg just start pulling the flour in. And just keep doing this with the scraper for now, otherwise it's going to be a mess. Push it down and you'll see the flour soak in to the squash. Just keep folding it in. And then somewhere down the line, it will get to the point where you'll definitely have to get your hands into this. Sometimes what I do is just go like this and then pat it, pat it, pat it, right like so. I always avoid trying to get my hands in because once you get your hands in, it gets pretty wet and pretty sticky. And then you find yourself having to wash your hands all the time. You can see it's starting to get together here. See that? And then sooner than later, you're going to have to get your hands in anyway. And always have your bag of flour on hand right over here in case, because you are going to need some more flour. Last time I did this, I needed to add a pretty good amount of flour, but you're always better off to start this way and then add some as need be instead of too much flour. If you put in too much flour, then it ends up dry, and then it makes it almost impossible to get it wet again. Look at that. See that? Now gnocchi's going to naturally be pretty tacky, but we're going to, I'll add some flour to this a little. And if you do it right, it's really very, very clean. It's not as messy as I thought it would be. Here we go. I'm going to wash my hands and then probably start working it with some flour. Okay. That's about good for now. If you feel it's a little wet, just add a little flour. And there's something about gnocchi that you think you got a decent consistency, and the more you work it, it gets wet again, and it gets wet again. So once you get it to a consistency that you want, don't play with it a lot because it'll continue to get wet. And you'll be struggling adding flour, and you don't really want to add that much more flour than what's already in there. That'll keep them lighter. That's about it. Don't play with it too much. And you can see how supple it is. See that? So this is a trick that I learned, and it actually works great. Okay, so what we'll do, we're going to keep this all over here like so. We're going to put this right up here like this, because the dough is pretty worked already. And flatten it out like a pancake. So it's about maybe a 1/2 inch to 3/4 of an inch high, like this. This is what works great. And don't play with it. Just get it nice and flat. I'll show you what's kind of cool about this. Okay, we're ready to make gnocchis. It's that simple. So what we'll do, the flour over here like this. Roberto Tuliano showed me this in Rome, and it works awesome. And create a bed of flour right in front of your workspace, right like this. Okay? Just go like this. So we have a little workspace. Okay? I'm gonna wash my hands. take a knife, and as high as your dough is, as tall as it is, you're going to make a cut this way, right like that. And just pull it out of the way like so. And you're going to see it's wet, okay? And just make, again, as tall as it is, make it that wide, like that. It's a little sticky, so. Okay? What you do, and now you don't have to really roll it as much. See this? It's the same height as it is wide. So you really only have to roll around this out, and there you go. You don't have to play with it that much. And put it on top of the bed of flour, right like that. Okay? Take this, go like this. See that? Make sure you have a little flour over here. And just roll it enough to round it. That's it. And you don't have to shape them. See, it's already shaped. Put that right in line, like so. Take this, go like this, roll it round, right like that. And that's it. Put it over here like this, and put them all on the bed of flour, right like that. You can do probably one more. There we go. Roll it. Roll it. That's it. Cut this in half. Put it on top of the flour. That's it. Put it on top of the flour, right like that. There's your 5 rows or whatever you want to make. Now go ahead and cut them into the size gnocchis you want to make. Cut down and spread it apart like that. Now realize these edges are still going to be wet. So I'll show you what's cool about this. Look at all the gnocchis you got already. Take some flour, put the flour over the top, like this. Okay, that's it. Take your scooper, pick up your gnocchis with your scooper. Let's see. Even if you pick up the flour with it, don't worry about it. Just pick up your gnocchis like this, shake them, and that takes the flour and it puts the flour on the wet edges, the wet cut edges. Put them on the tray like that, and there's your gnocchis. That's it. It's that simple. And what I do is I normally take, actually what I should really do is you take this and you fold them like this. And that makes sure that it gets all the edges wet. There you go. That's better. Gets the edges a little wet or drier. Now pick up your strainer. Doing this lefty because of the camera. Shake them out like that. There they are. That's it. And when you do this, it sifts the flour Back onto the board. Make sure you didn't leave any in there. And this pile of flour is ready to go for the next set of cuts. And that's it. So then what I'll do is I'll take this tray and I'll make sure that they're all not touching each other, individualize them like this, and put them in the freezer. Now, some people now will take these and roll them onto a fork to make the shapes, and some people claim that those grooves hold the sauce, but I don't do that. That makes the job harder. There you go. This bed is ready to go. So then once these are individualized like this, I'll take the whole sheet and put them in the freezer, and I'll let them freeze individually. Once they're frozen individually, I'll bag them into about 200 grams in each bag, and that's 200 grams for dinner is normally what a restaurant considers one serving, okay? And you can bag them 200 grams in each serving, and they're ready to go. And so this is probably one of the easiest Italian, I don't know if you really call them gnocchi pasta, I guess you do. Now, if you wanted to do this with potatoes, like a regular potato gnocchi, it's the same exact recipe, except you use like the golden potatoes. If you use the wrong potato, you'll find out that they hold a lot of water, and your mix won't work real well. That's it. This goes like this. I'll cut this in half, like this, like that, like that. It's easier to do smaller. Like that. Like that. But the hardest part that I always had when I did this is how you roll them out to be consistent size. And it's so much easier to create this pancake and then just cut the width the same as you do the height, and they're just pretty much square. And then all you're doing is rounding the edges, so you don't have to work the dough at all. And it works so much easier. And there we go. These rows are pretty long, so I think I'll make it with that knife. I won't. So let's go this one. That's it. Goes fast. Goes very fast. That's it. That's what they look like. All right, so that's the whole trick. I'm not going to bore you any more than that. The rest is just over and over and over until it's all gone. So I got about, there's about one tray full already, and I have about a half a pancake left. And so this batch made 2 trays. I can't tell you what they weigh, but it's a pretty good amount. So That's about it. I'm shutting down. I'm going to keep going here. And that's how you make butternut squash gnocchis.